Planned Parenthood was, in a way, kind of non-controversial in the 80s and 90s. They had very high approval ratings. Defunding Planned Parenthood was just a niche sort of pro-life thing that only a handful of people really cared about. They try to portray themselves as doing healthcare and doing other things, but they're really all about abortion. McDonald's might, give away napkins and salt packets and pepper and straws. McDonald's sells hamburgers by and large. You don't think of them as a napkin vendor. Similarly, Planned Parenthood sells abortions. They do a few other things, but mainly they are an abortion vendor. And, I think we've done well to highlight and expose that. I don't know what would have happened if pro-lifers hadn't.
Well, howdy, everyone, and welcome to the Lauren Musica Show. I'm your host, Lauren Musica, attorney and president CEO of Sidewalk Advocates for Life. The pro-life movement has been working and praying for this for so long, and it finally happened. Congress has ended forced taxpayer funding of big abortion. Now, it may not have happened exactly as we would have preferred. Planned Parenthood has been defunded for just 1 year, although we hope and pray that the term will be extended by Congress. Be that as it may, the results have been a reason for moms and babies across the nation and for all of us people of faith and conscience, to celebrate. Soon after we learned of the decision to defund, Planned Parenthood announced over 25 clinic closures across the country. And now it seems as though every week we learn of a new closure. Most recently, headlines trumpeted that both Planned Parenthood clinics in Louisiana had closed for good, making it the most populous of 4 states with 0 Planned Parenthood locations. The Wisconsin Planned Parenthood affiliate has announced that it will stop providing abortions. 5 Planned Parenthoods in California have closed. And on a personal note, I can't even believe this. I was absolutely ecstatic to learn of the closure of the Houston Planned Parenthood mega facility. Before the Dobbs decision, it had been the largest abortion facility in the Western Hemisphere. And after Dobbs, it became America's largest abortion referral facility. It was right in my backyard. I had actually spent countless hours praying and reaching out to women right outside its doors. Upwards, if you can believe this, upwards of 10,000 babies were aborted within those doors every single year. It was said that they could seat as many as 60 women on that 3rd floor where they did abortions. And now those doors are closed for good. What a moment watching that Goliath fall. We are living in exciting times when the pro-life movement is making incredible progress towards protecting and preserving innocent human life. And I'm so delighted to dive more into this topic with my special guest today, Dr. Michael New. Let me go ahead and give him a proper introduction. Dr. Michael J. New is an assistant professor of practice at the Bush School of Business at the Catholic University of America, a senior associate scholar at the Charlotte Lozier Institute, and a Page Comstock Cunningham Senior Fellow at Americans United for Life. A Phi Beta Kappa graduate from Dartmouth College, Dr. New received a master's degree in statistics and a doctorate in political science from Stanford University in 2002. Dr. New researches and writes about the social science of sanctity of life issues. He gives presentations on the 50% reduction in the U.S. abortion rate since 1980 and the positive impact of pro-life laws. He has been a guest on EWTN News Nightly and CNN International, among others. He appears frequently on Catholic radio and is a frequent blogger on National Review Online's The Corner. Let's go ahead and welcome to the program, Dr. New. Hello there, Dr. New. How are you?
Excellent. Glad to be with you.
So honored to be with you. When I thought of all these Planned Parenthood closures, I thought of your Twitter or X account. You are constantly updating us, those of us who are on the sidewalk or in academia and educational efforts and beyond. You have been keeping up with all of these closures across the country. I want to go ahead and first start with the big picture. Overall, how would you say Planned Parenthood is doing? The loss of Medicaid funds surely hurts, but with so many corporate and individual supporters, is the defunding truly a fatal blow or not? What would you say?
They're doing poorly. I'm not sure it's a fatal blow, but it's a real setback for them.
Yeah.
Planned Parenthood has been closures have been happening for a while now. I mean, I think I tracked the data back to the 2000s, and I think over the past 20 years, pre-Dobbs, they went from like 900 facilities to like about 700, roughly.
Mhm.
So there's been kind of a downward trajectory for a long time, but defunding has certainly accelerated that. One thing I've always told pro-life audiences is that big abortion needs big government. Planned Parenthood is really propped up by government funds. Nearly every year, they get close to 40% of their budget from the government, and most of that money is in the form of Medicaid reimbursements. So the fact that they're no longer getting federal Medicaid funds, that's a big blow. That is taking away a very important source of revenue for them. We've seen at least 44 Planned Parenthoods either close or announce their closure this year, and there's probably more to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I want to talk for a minute about the Planned Parenthood brand. Over the decades, they have done an amazing job. We have to at least give them this credit, reframing abortion as reproductive freedom or women's health. Times are changing, but is that having any impact on their brand strength? What do you think their greatest brand weaknesses and strengths are?
Well, I think their brand has been tarnished. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting. Pro-lifers sometimes don't always think long term, and we don't always appreciate the progress we've made. The funding Planned Parenthood never came up in the 1990s. Republicans took control of Congress. This is something that just wasn't really on the radar screen. It was a very niche pro-life issue that only a few folks cared about. But things changed. We had great investigative reporting by people like Lila Rose and Dave Daleiden, and people saw the misconduct, and Republican Party became a more pro-life party, and more Republican elected officials got interested in this issue. So at one point, I mean, their approval ratings were sky high. The 80s and even the early 90s, their approval ratings are probably 80, 90% positive. Now, we've at least gotten pro-lifers, conservatives, Republicans on board with defunding them. They're now seen as partisan. They're seen as ideological. I think we have, a ways to go, but their brand has been tarnished. They're no longer seen as a good healthcare provider. They're seen as big abortion. And that's a good development for pro-lifers.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask this in follow up. I heard this said years ago, and I don't know who it was exactly, but if not for the efforts of all of us in fighting Planned Parenthood peacefully, prayerfully, through all of these different efforts, prayer education, outreach, undercover investigative journalism, and beyond, there are many who think that Planned Parenthood would have been the so-called lens crafters of the modern era, that it would have been in, every corner of every shopping center. I'd love to get your thoughts on that, because sometimes what we don't see is obviously what would have happened had we not been doing what we've been doing the last few decades. So, your thoughts on how all of these collective efforts have contributed to brand this present brand weakness and all of these closures.
No, I think the pro-life efforts have played a big role. I mean, again, Planned Parenthood was, in a way, kind of non-controversial in the 80s and 90s. They had
Mm,
very high approval ratings. The defunding Planned Parenthood was just a niche sort of pro-life thing that only a handful of people really cared about. Getting the Republican Party on board just seemed far-fetched.
yeah.
But people have done the work. We've done the investigative research. Again, thanks again to Lila and David for their great work. We've just publicized, this is an abortion facility. They try to portray themselves as doing healthcare and doing other things, but they're really all about abortion. They did 400,000 abortions last year.
Yeah.
That's the most they've ever done. That's probably around 40% of the total in the U.S. are done by Planned Parenthood. I mean, McDonald's might, give away napkins and salt packets and pepper and straws. McDonald's sells hamburgers by and large. You don't think of them as a napkin vendor. Similarly,
Right.
Planned Parenthood sells abortions. They do a few other things, but mainly they are an abortion vendor. And,
Yeah.
I think we've done well to highlight and expose that. We've made them controversial. We've made them political. They're not enjoying the support they used to get. I don't know what would have happened if pro-lifers hadn't pursued this, but they'd be a lot more prevalent. They'd have more funding. They'd be a lot stronger. They'd be a more important culturally. But that's not the case right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So well said. And I have to make a pit stop and ask you about this because you are a sidewalk counselor. I'd love to hear how you think sidewalk counseling, sidewalk advocacy, prayer efforts in front of these facilities has contributed to hurting their bottom line. What have you seen with your own eyes and experienced?
In sidewalk housing, I always say it's the best and the worst thing I do every week.
Mm,
I think that if we're going to try to win this. We're not going to win flying a desk. We have to be there where the action's happening.
Yeah.
Is it always pleasant? No. Is it always rewarding? Sometimes not. Sometimes you just don't see positive things happening. I think our prayers are powerful and good things happen we don't see, but it's not always, you don't always see short-term positive things happening. But, I think that, Planned Parenthood is a lot weaker than people think, and we just need to put pressure on them however we can. Defunding them is a good pressure point, but so is sidewalk counseling. If we could turn away just a fraction of the people, that hurts their bottom line. Or if people who come don't realize it's an abortion facility and decide to get healthcare somewhere else, that squeezes them a bit. So anything we can do to kind of highlight their misconduct, highlight the fact they are primarily all about abortions, let people know there are places that, accept Medicaid, that don't do abortions. We have places in DC that will see low-income earners, will take Medicaid, provide good health care, and don't do abortions. We encourage them to go there instead. Any pressure you can put on them is important. Because again, they're not as strong as they're made out to be. They depend on government funding. Their revenues are, struggling to keep up with expenditures. Any pressure you can put on them will have positive impacts.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I love that thought that just being there on the ground affects their bottom line, right? Much less, of course, we believe that prayer and outreach makes a profound difference. I have to mention this statistic because it is just so profound. I know I've shared it before on the program, but have to do it again. At the last Planned Parenthood conference Abby Johnson went to before she left, Planned Parenthood director Abby Johnson left and became pro-life. She said that they told her that when there's a peaceful, prayerful presence in front of an abortion facility, that the cancellation or no-show rate can go as high as 75%. I mean, that is absolutely stunning and so instructive right there, right? And as you've highlighted so well, the pro-life movement works so much like the body of Christ, the hand and the foot and the eye and the mouth and beyond, right? And we have all these great collective efforts that have shined a light into the darkness that is Planned Parenthood. Scandal-ridden Planned Parenthood that's been caught aiding and abetting underage sex trafficking, teaching minor children BDSM, overbilling Medicaid. I mean, we've got a long rap sheet here. And so anytime we can bring out into the light what has gone on in the darkness, it's helpful. It's helpful for people to possibly that day or soon after make another choice. I have to admit, Dr. New, it makes me chuckle a little bit when I see Planned Parenthood's statement blaming political pressure for closures of their facilities. So, can you just kind of highlight more definitively your thoughts about the real reasons why they're closing some of their clinics and how they're choosing which ones to close?
Well, I think it's kind of ironic that they're saying political pressure because, they are political. Planned Parenthood has a political action committee. They put a lot of money into politics. A vast, vast, vast majority of the money they put in goes to the Democratic Party or elected officials from the Democratic Party. So I think it's kind of ironic to complain about politics when this is a game they've chosen to play themselves. But again, their model for a long time has always been dependent on government funding. Both federal government and state governments. And some states have done well defunding Planned Parenthood. Texas, as recently as I guess 2010, 2011, got Planned Parenthood out of their state family planning program. And that took courage. A lot of self-proclaimed public health experts were very upset and said this will be a public health disaster and there will be skyrocketing teen pregnancies. Didn't happen. Teen pregnancies actually fell in Texas after Planned Parenthood was defunded. So their business model requires government funding. The fact they've been defunded means they have to close facilities. I don't really see a lot of rhyme or reason as to which ones they're closing. It's been very diverse. They've closed places in California. Obviously, they've had to close some places where pro-life laws are in effect because, again, they can't make money doing abortions if there are pro-life laws in effect. But they've closed facilities in kind of pretty liberal parts of the country, too. I don't see a nice tidy pattern. But bottom line is, there is pressure being put on them. They are subject to the same laws of supply and demand, like any other entity would be. They can't lose money forever. And if funding's cut off, then they will close facilities. And about, again, 44 either closed down this year or they've announced closures of 44.
Yeah. Really helpful to understand. It's great. I saw a headline in the Christian Post a few days ago. It said, Planned Parenthood closures, women, don't fear for your health. I was blown away that they said the quiet part out loud, right? We know that the abortion industry as a whole has convinced so many people that abortion is some sort of life-saving measure for women, key to their survival. Or that if these Planned Parenthoods close, where are women going to go for basic health care, right? But of course, you and I know so well that women don't need Planned Parenthood. So I'd love for you maybe to take a moment to talk about the truth of what Planned Parenthood actually offers clients.
Right. I mean, they did 400,000 abortions last year. That was the all-time record for them. And they do an annual report. And when it comes out, I always get it, and I always try to turn around some fast commentary. But my blog post writes itself. It's always the same thing. They always do more abortions and do less health care. Typically, there's a decrease in cancer screenings. There's a decrease in other health services they do. Abortions usually go up. Other health care goes down. And when Planned Parenthood's close, women don't need to fear. I mean, there are fairly qualified health centers that vastly outnumber Planned Parenthoods, I think by like a ratio of like 8-1. And these fairly qualified health centers accept Medicaid. They're in much more diverse parts of the country. I mean, Planned Parenthoods are kind of located in big cities and college towns. There aren't any Planned Parenthoods in, say, rural areas. But these fairly qualified health centers are, throughout the country. They outnumber Planned Parenthoods. They typically accept a range of insurance plans. Again, Planned Parenthood does not provide a big percentage of healthcare in this country. They
Yeah.
provide a big percentage of abortions, but healthcare is done by other people, other professionals, and women can go to these other places and get high quality care.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up. Like, I think a lot of people miss that Planned Parenthood offers a very low level menu of woman services and even more
Mhm.
limited for men, right? We're talking well woman exam, breast exam, STD, STI testing. Sometimes we'll do a couple of super basic health screenings, but they can't actually always treat the problem in office unless it's an STI, STD, right? And then they're America's largest abortion provider. I think it was their latest annual report saying that 97.1% of all pregnant women who darken the doors of a Planned Parenthood get an abortion. And that to me is stunning for a so-called reproductive health care provider. Like, you would think that if they're toting themselves that way, that there would be a lot higher adoptions and a lot higher percentage of people choosing parenting. So, whether they're putting pressure on people or the customer recognizes that they're seeking the abortion empire as a solution to their crisis. I mean, this is absolutely unbelievable that this menu of services, so-called services, is extremely limited, right? Unbelievable. Yeah. And the other thing that you brought up that is so important, I think, for our audience to hear is the idea of federally qualified health centers, FQHCs, outnumbering these Planned Parenthood centers at least by 8-1. And I've even heard in conjunction with other community health organizations that it can be as many as 20-1. I mean, that's pretty stunning to think that we have these health centers that work on a sliding fee scale or sometimes even offer free services for those that cannot afford it, which is more than Planned Parenthood can offer, right? They do everything a Planned Parenthood does and so much more. So I even had a friend call me the other day and she said, Lauren, I was posting, all about the victory of all of these Planned Parenthood centers closing. And my friend was like, oh no, where are these women going to go for their health care? And I mean, the proof is right here. We have other options for women and it's not joined to the abortion empire. And I really hope that people hear that. While we're on the subject, I want to talk about some of the other places that women can go. I think I'm kind of setting you up here to talk about some of our friends that we refer to on the sidewalk, right? But some of the other
Sure.
resources available to women when they are facing an unexpected pregnancy, and need health care in that regard and need a solution to their crisis. Can you talk about some of the opportunities that people have before them in the modern era to go elsewhere?
Sure. I mean, right now in the United States, we have a nice array of pro-life pregnancy help centers.
Yeah.
There's over 2,700. They provide a very, wide range of services, including shelter, healthcare, counseling, financial assistance. They're really on the front lines every day, helping women in need. Anytime I give any kind of a talk to a pro-life group, I always please to encourage them, identify a local pregnancy help center and do something. If you only give a little, give a little. If you can volunteer your time, that's valuable too. They're often on limited budgets, but they can make a little bit of money go a long way and do a great job helping women in need. So there's over 2,700. I worked with Loesch Institute last year to, kind of crunch the numbers on, clients, and we found they helped over 970,000 clients. There were 44,000 volunteers. and provide over $300 billion worth of goods and services every year. So
Wow.
they're really, again, almost all of this is donations, volunteers. They're doing great work building culture of life. They don't get much recognition. In fact, they get some hostility from pro-abortion politicians who want to thwart their efforts, which I think is just awful. But they deserve our support.
Yeah, absolutely. And so noteworthy that they outnumber abortion facilities 4 to 1. These free pregnancy help organizations that are available. Many of them are professionally affiliated with renowned organizations like Heartbeat International and CareNet, right? And I just encourage everyone to know where their nearest pregnancy resource center is, because even if you're not somebody who goes to the sidewalk and wants to provide men and women a life affirming alternative to abortion, right? Because that's what we do as sidewalk advocates. We're crisis intervention. We want to get her into the arms of someone who can do that ongoing crisis management. So our work primarily is to be a handoff to pregnancy resource centers and then hopefully bring them the next one and bring them the next one. We're there as I love to say, the fairy godmothers, the fairy godfathers, just offering all of this free help and letting people know it's available. And I am constantly stunned about how few clients know that these centers exist in their backyard. But again, even if you're not somebody that does that work with us here at Sidewalk Advocates for Life or 40 Days for Life or others, I encourage you to figure out where your local pregnancy resource center is. No doubt there is one near you. So you can go to optionline.org or pregnancy-decision-line.com. The first one's run by Heartbeat International, the second one, CareNet. Again, two of the biggest pregnancy center systems in the country, maybe the world, honestly. And it will allow you to enter your city and state or zip code, and you can go ahead and pull up a list of your nearest pregnancy resource centers. And again, I just encourage everybody to go visit them, find out what they offer, right? Because at some point, statistically, you're going to know somebody who's facing an unexpected pregnancy. And as people of life and faith and conscience, what an awesome opportunity that we have to be the gateway to these life affirming resources in our community to let women know that they are not alone, that they have options and resources and a community of support ready to go to bat for them as soon as they're ready to consider a different decision. Dr. New, in closing here, and again, thank you so much for your time. This has been so helpful. How would you, uh, what would you say the current state of the union is on abortion when it comes to the post-Roe landscape? What are things to watch for? What are you encouraged by? And then how would you encourage the troops going forward?
One thing I'll say is that, reversing Roe presents both opportunities and challenges to the pro-life movement.
Yeah.
That many of our states have moved very quickly to pass strong pro-life laws. We have about abortions pretty much banned in about 12 states right now. There's 4 other states, which is the Heartbeat Act, where the preborn are protected after 6 weeks gestation. So we've done well, getting laws passed, and many conservative states have been very active in doing so, and that's been a blessing. And we have also birth data from these states that shows that when a pro-life law is passed, more children get born. So I think that I always tell pro-life audiences that abortions are hard to count, but babies are easy to count. And we see births going up. That's powerful evidence these laws are doing some good.
Yeah.
That said, a big challenge we face is frankly telehealth abortions. The other side has been savvy, and they have been able to market these telehealth abortions in states where strong pro-life laws are in effect. And, it's kind of a sad story that, prior to 2020, if a woman wanted a chemical abortion, she had to have an in-person medical exam. That requirement was loosened or ended during the pandemic. The Biden administration continued this unwise policy after the pandemic ended. And sadly, the Trump administration so far has continued that policy as well. Right now, the Trump administration could end telehealth abortions tomorrow. They could restore the rules that were in place prior to 2020. I know that Robert Kennedy Jr. is doing a review of the abortion pill. That's a good sign, but they need to do more faster. Unborn children and mothers are being hurt by these unrated chemical abortions. Again, if a woman has an ectopic pregnancy, contains chemical abortion that can be fatal. If she's further along in gestation, she realizes has a chemical abortion, that can have some very negative, serious health consequences. So that has to be our top issue. I think pro-lifers really have to communicate to the administration that, this is something that we want and we need faster action on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And can you read the tea leaves for us a little bit? Do you think Congress is going to continue to defund Planned Parenthood? Any guesses there?
I don't really like making predictions. One prediction I'll make is that people make predictions, get egg on their face. And that's been a pretty good prediction in my life. But I will say this. I mean, I think that the door is open. I mean, I think, midterm elections are important. Usually the president's party does not do that well during the midterm, but there may be some surprises. I think that the Democrats are finding ways to shoot themselves in the foot, and these midterms may go better for Republicans than we may think. If Republicans do control majority of the House and Senate, I think we will defund Planned Parenthood again. I think this is the new normal.
Yeah.
I think that we're not going to always defund it. I can't expect pro-lifers to win every election, but I do think that Republicans do take control of both the Congress, the House, the Senate, and the presidency. I think that's a likely outcome. So I think we're kind of entering into what I'd call a new normal.
Yeah, I like the optimism there. I hope you're right. So that's what I believe. That's what I'm hoping for at the very least. So I think that's very fair. Very good. Well, Dr. New, thank you so much. If anybody has spent any time in the pro-life movement, they know who you are. You're the one encouraging us with all the numbers and the wisdom in the background. And I know you've greatly encouraged me on the sidewalk and beyond. Thank you so much for everything that you have done and continue to do. And we will keep vigil for what's ahead. Thanks again so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
Awesome. All right. Well, here's a closing thought. Nearly 100 years ago, Margaret Sanger opened the Birth Control Clinical Research Bureau in Manhattan and incorporated the American Birth Control League, two organizations that eventually merged to become Planned Parenthood Federation of America, Inc., or shorthand Planned Parenthood. 55 years ago, Planned Parenthood of Syracuse became the first Planned Parenthood facility to offer abortion, which was legal in New York through the 24th week of pregnancy. After the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision, other Planned Parenthood locations followed suit. And ultimately, Planned Parenthood became an abortion giant, or really an abortion empire, right? Putting money and political influence to work to maintain the right to kill preborn children. In its 2023 annual report, it claimed to have provided more than 402,000 abortions in the preceding year alone. And PPFA provided affiliates with $3.4 million in funding to provide to more than 12,000 women who traveled out of state for a legal abortion that same year. Theirs is a legacy built on death and despair. But thanks be to God, it's beginning to crumble. It is a powerful lesson for all of us in the pro-life movement that we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. We remember all those who lost their lives or were wounded by this organization, and we will continue to give thanks for the lives that have been and continue to be saved, more of them with every new announcement of a facility closure. When facilities close, lives are saved. Yes, we will continue to give thanks, but we will also continue to work towards more closures of more Planned Parenthood facilities. We will not forget the other facilities that provide abortions. We will pray and work for their closure too. Yes, we will continue to give thanks, but we will also continue to work towards more closures of more Planned Parenthoods. And we will not forget the facilities that don't provide abortions. They're heads of the dragon that are referring to the abortion clinics, that feeding the bottom line. Will work for their closure too. And we will continue to work to connect with and to serve those women whose situation is so fraught with difficulty that they believe abortion is their only solution. Let this moment in our nation's history reinvigorate our souls for the journey ahead, and let us remain steadfast with eyes on the proverbial prize of a truly abortion-free America. I think it's more within reach than ever before. With that, thank you again for joining me for another episode of The Lauren Musica Show. We'll be back here next Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Central on the Sidewalk Advocates for Life Facebook page, YouTube channel, or wherever you get podcasts. Thanks so much, everybody.